In this video, I've been commissioned to make a cedar chest or a blanket chest or a hope chest, whatever you want to call it. Um, but I decided to make it out of ambrosia maple and black walnut. I figured at Fisher's Woodshop, he has got a lot of walnut laying around. So I waited till he left and I snuck some pieces out of his garage. Maybe I shouldn't confess that in this video. Oh well, never mind. I've got two pieces of beautiful black walnut. This is going to be an accent piece on the cedar chest. So I need to break this up into smaller, manageable pieces. So let's get started with the legs. Now, legs are going to be 1.5 by 1.5 square. And over at Fisher's, he didn't have that size. So I'm going to have to cut this up, mill it, and then glue it together so I can get that 1.5 by 1.5. So let's get this material broken up. So I took my black walnut and broke it up into a smaller chunk, and I decided to, instead of making 4 legs individually, I would just glue up one big blank, and then after that dried up, I would come back and mill it down into the 4 legs that I needed. So just milling this material down to a rough size, getting it all cleaned up for glue up. All right, so while that's gluing up, I'm going to focus on the front panels of the cedar chest. I've got some, I think it's 5/4 ambrosia maple that I'm cutting down, book matching it to get a 1/2 inch thick panel for these pieces. I'm just making sure everything is nice and tight before I glue those up. Now, because this is middle of the winter and it's too cold in the garage to glue these panels up, I had to resort to moving to the basement to get all these glued up. So here I'm just adding my clamps and cawling sticks to make sure everything's nice and flat for these front panels. All right, while those dry, I can go ahead and use my CNC to create some templates for all the curved elements of this cedar chest. Having a CNC makes this quite quick since I've got a lot of curved parts. All right, just making sure I get it marked to know which part it is, and then I can cut these out, get those tabs removed. All right, here I'm just laying all the curved parts out on the stock that I have. I just want to make sure I utilize all the material the best that I can. I just don't want to have any waste if I can help it. All right, now I'm just using double-sided tape to attach the curved pieces to the parts that I just previously cut out, and then I can just trim the ends to the template. That way I can know I got a nice square edge. All right, so this double stick tape works very well. So it helps keep things nice and secure in place on all the blanks that needed to be have this template put on. Now this top piece is the top part of the cedar chest front. It's actually the top and bottom. So this router bit I'm using I found on Amazon for quite a good price, a lot cheaper than all these other places and other YouTubers that are advertising places to get their bits. Here I'm just making sure I get everything that fits nice, make sure everything looks good before I go on to the next step of cutting the side pieces with the stile and rail bits for doors. So this is something that I've never done before. I've freehanded when you're doing flush on the template guides, but I've never freehanded anything this big before. I'm a little worried about my little digits. I do have a test one of these, so I'll test it out on that first to see how it goes. But I'm not sure if these will work very well. I don't know. We'll give it a shot. I'll be honest with you, that was a little scary, but it worked. I got a bunch more of these to go. After doing all the router work for the stiles and rails, I can go ahead and kind of pre-assemble it, make sure everything fits nice and tight together and I don't have any issues for the glue up. Same thing with the side panels. Alright, so I got the sides and the front frames done. The next step is to go in the basement, grab the center panels, scrape the glue and sand them, get them to thickness, and then cut them to shape with the templates that I cut out on the CNC. So this particular panel is a little bit warped or bowed, cupped, so it's cupped like this. Not much, but enough that I want to try and fix it. So I did watch a video where you put water on this side, not a lot, just enough to get it damp, and then you flip it over so the cup side is down on plastic. So the idea is as it dries, it pulls the moisture through the board and is supposed to get the warp out. So we're gonna try that on just one, just in case I mess up and I have to remake it. I only need to remake one. There's 2 or 3 boards that are cupped or bowed like this. So we're gonna give it a shot, see if I can get it to work. Wish me luck. Using the plethora of Walmart bags, I went ahead and took a squirt bottle and just misted the top of this very lightly. I didn't want to get it soaking wet. I just make sure everything's nice and just damp. Then flip it over, let it dry overnight. All right, so adding the water to the cup side, flipping it over on plastic and letting it air dry for a day actually got the bow out of the board. It turned out a lot better than I thought it was going to. So what I've done is I did that to the other ones that had the warp in it. I can come back when they're dry and run them through the drum sander. Alright, if this is the first time you've visited my YouTube channel, you'll notice that this drum sander is not a traditional one. This is one that I built. If you want to check that out, I did do a video on it here on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. I also have files on Thingiverse that are just the solid models. There's no plans, so you'd have to follow the video along if you wanted to try and build that. There are 3 videos. It was a long project. After the sanding, I went ahead and cut the panels to length, and then I'm just using my templates to trace onto those panels and giving the curve cut on the bandsaw. And then go ahead and double stick the tape those templates back onto the panels, and then I'll use the flush trim router to flush those up. So there's a step that I forgot to record, and that was to create, I guess, a tongue feature on these panels that fit into the slots of the stile and rails for the sides. And then back down to the basement so everything dries to glue it all up. Now you just add a little bit of glue to the tongues of the rails, or those are the stiles, because that center panel is a floating panel. You want it to float, otherwise you'll have some issues with expansion and contraction of the material. All right, on to the center panel. Same thing, add a little bit of glue to those tongues, and slide them into place and clamp everything up nice and tight. Now this is the first time that I've done curved center panels for anything like this. And it turned out really well. There's a lot more steps involved, but it gives that extra look of elegance maybe, and it turned out very well. As you'll see later on, probably in video 2, that I add a walnut element to these panels to give the front panels a pop to them. With everything dry, I can go ahead and sand it down. I'm just using a belt sander to get those joints down. I don't want to sand the whole thing, because then I'd have to go back and sand it a lot more aggressively with an orbital sander and get those edges cleaned up so I can run it through the table saw. I'm just using the panel itself as my gauge. All right, back to the table saw sled to cut the back panel. Now this back panel I made out of poplar. It's not going to be seen. Cedar chests usually get put next to a wall or at the end of a bed. This panel I just glued up. I figured you didn't need to see the process of me gluing this up. And then cutting the side panel, or cutting the front panel to length. Alright, with these panels all cut, I can focus my attention on the legs. Now I'm just cleaning up one edge on the joiner and then cutting these to rough size on the table saw. After that, I'll head back over to the joiner and get myself a nice 90-degree edge on these parts. After they're all done, I can go ahead and run them through the planer, getting them close to finish width on all 4 sides. And then over to the belt sander to go ahead and finish it off with a nice clean finish. And then over to the chop saw just to give myself one edge that's clean. I am going to taper 2 of the edges of these legs, giving it a little more elegant look once it's all put together. Now, this is a quick jig that I just created just to get myself this taper. Once those are all tapered and ready to go, I can go ahead and cut them to finished length. The next step is to create loose tenons on all of these parts. That's how I'm going to glue it all together. To do this, I'm using a loose tenoning jig. It creates mortises, and it's based off the 3x3 Customs mini mortising jig. But the big difference on this one is that I switched out the top 3/4 inch wood plate for a 1/4 inch acrylic plate. This gives me more depth out of my router bit. Now I did create a new jig based on this, but has more functionality. I created plans and a video. I'll put those links in the description below. Go ahead and check those out, and if you're so inclined to help support the channel and purchase those plans. All right, it's day 225 on the cedar chest build. It's 24 degrees outside. I've got the heater going in the garage. Hopefully it'll heat up in here pretty soon. Got my hot chocolate. And my router bit showed up yesterday. So this router bit is going to help me create the tenons for the loose tenons. But first, I've got the 2 halves of the top all glued up in the basement. Going to bring them up, plane them down to thickness, biscuit them together, and then glue them back together. And then I can get started on the top. And while all that's drying, I'll work on actually assembling the cedar chest with the loose tenons. So let's get started in a minute after I have my hot chocolate. So this router bit is a 1/4 inch diameter bit. So what it's going to do is it's going to create a nice curved edge for those loose tenons. With a lot of stock laying around, I decided to create my own instead of buying dominoes, which goes with the SpeTool domino. So something to save money and to use scrap up. Now I decided on the back panel only to add some pocket holes just to help secure everything together. I'm putting them on the inside of the cedar chest because the inside is going to be lined with cedar and you'll never see these. All right, with everything cut out and ready to assemble, I figured it's time to give this a nice sanding because it's going to be a little more difficult once everything's all put together. And everybody loves sanding. It takes forever. All right, assembly time. All right, this is where it's going to come together and look awesome, right? Yeah. All right, so I've been debating or trying to figure out the best way to attach this back panel, which is solid poplar with the grain running horizontally, yes, to the leg with the grain running vertically. The reason I've been trying to debate what to do with this is because you got end grain going into side grain and you got wood movement, and I want to allow for that. So I've been doing a little research, and I think I'm going to do it like a kitchen table breadboard ends. And what I mean by that is the loose tenons will be glued permanently to this side, okay? Only the center one is going to get glued to the poplar. And then what I'm going to do is I mark these holes like I showed you before, and once everything's glued and clamped nice and tight, I'm going to drill holes here through the loose tenons and use a pin to lock those in place. So now this should help with wood movement so that things don't come apart. But in addition to that, I added pocket screws that will help secure everything together as well, because I'm sure people are going to be sitting on this and I just don't want it to fall apart. The front and sides, I can glue those because all those side pieces are going vertically along with the leg, so there should not be any problem with wood movement. So let's get this thing put together, glued together, so it's all ready to go. So after I drilled those holes, I'm using glue dowels. These are fluted ones to secure this together. So I just drove it in a little bit, added some glue around it so it'll go down those grooves, and tap it in a little bit farther to get it all nice and secure. After everything's dry, I can come back with a handsaw and get those dowels cut flush. All right, now I can focus on getting the side panels attached. So just like I said before, I decided I can glue these all up nice and solid because all the grain is going in the same direction. I really need to get a brush so I can brush that glue into those mortises. All right, now with the front panel already put together, I can go ahead and put that on top of the sides. Now I just need to add all my clamps, make sure everything is nice and tight. I want to make sure that everything is flush on the top as well. All right, with everything clamped up, I need to check for square, and it is out a little bit, so I needed to add a clamp diagonally, and then give it a little bit of squeeze to get this thing squared up. Once the cedar chest has some time to dry for a while, I can go ahead and add some cleats to the inside bottom of the cedar chest. These cleats are what's going to hold the actual bottom in. And instead of measuring, I decided to just cut some quick reference sticks to help the process a little quicker. Just makes it a little easier instead of having to measure. And I'm going to add some side pieces. Now, I hadn't mentioned this before, but I'm going to add a drawer to the bottom of the cedar chest. And these are some 1/2-inch thick MDF pieces that the drawer hardware is going to attach to. And there we go, attaching the bottom in nice and solid. A couple screws to make sure that it stays in place. All right, because I designed the cedar chest with so many different design elements on it, that the taping and recording of everything, there's just so much content that I can't condense it down into one video. So this is going to be the end of video 1 of the cedar chest build, and I hope to see you next time on video 2 of the cedar chest build. So we'll see you next time here on Smedley Wood Design. All right, for this next build, we're going to create a cedar chest or a blanket chest or a hope chest, whatever you want to call it. But my chest is going to box, not chest. All right, let's try a different intro.